A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today, so cheers. Today I'm going to be talking about the novelization of the Dark Phoenix saga from the X-Men. Now this has been written by Stuart. This was released in 2019, basically to correspond with the release of the movie X-Men Dark Phoenix, which a lot of people said was shit, but you know what? I don't care. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. Now, for those of you that don't know the Dark Phoenix, this was a storyline that was written by two of the greatest X-Men writers and artists of all time, Chris Claremont and John Byrne. It ran from, I believe, issue 129 to 138 of the Uncanny X-Men. Started around January 1980, if I'm not mistaken, but please don't quote me on that. And the Phoenix Force has pretty much stuck around in comic books. We've had the Return of Dark Phoenix. We've had, in Avengers versus X-Men, the Phoenix Force splitting up into 5 of the heroes, which actually culminated in Cyclops killing Professor Xavier. So this was kind of a really interesting read for me. I did review Days of Future Past earlier on the channel, and I'm a huge fan of these Marvel novelizations. They're actually very well written and adapted just enough that it isn't kind of the same. I mean, the Dark Phoenix saga happened in 1980, and, you know, this has been kind of adapted to take into account modern times with cell phones and all that kind of cool shit. So, let's just get right into the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. 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 People.
So this book basically starts with a number of the X-Men. We have Cyclops, Wolverine, Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler, and Jean Grey. And if you don't know who any of these characters are, go and read a fucking comic book, people. Or go and watch the X-Men animated series, or watch any of the movies, or just, you know, go to Wikipedia. I don't give a shit. They're on a space shuttle with this doctor who is studying kind of the sun, and the space shuttle's kind of about to crash. There's these solar flares hitting it, and Jean Grey absorbs some of the doctor's kind of memories on how to work the space shuttle, as she's the only one that can get this thing back to Earth as this solar flare kind of hits. The other heroes are in this life pod kind of thing, and Jean Grey manages to get the shuttle safely back to Earth. Her powers kind of flare up, and we don't really know what's going on. We then cut to Kitty Pryde. This is kind of the introduction of Kitty Pryde into the X-Men. Her powers kind of manifest at school. Her best friend in the world basically thinks she's a freak now. And Emma Frost, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club. Again, I'm going to be throwing these names out there, and if you don't know who they are, please go and look them up, because I'm not going to explain them all. But Emma Frost goes there to recruit Kitty to this school that she is running. She's kind of trying to get these young mutants to make her own, basically, superpowered team. Kitty doesn't like that. Jean Grey is having these kind of problems. So basically, in the interim between the crash and the space shuttle kind of crash landing, whatever, And now it's been a year, and Jean Grey is in Greece because she thinks that the team is dead in this fight with Magneto in a volcano. We don't get any of that kind of description. It's just her memories. So she's in Greece and she meets this guy called Jason Wingard. And Jason Wingard is also known as Mastermind, and he can create illusions, and he keeps giving her this illusion that she is the lady of the manor of this Hellfire Club thing back in the 18th century or whatever. So she's kind of going a little bit batshit crazy there. And the X-Men in the interim think Jean is dead, and they've been going about. So they're trying to recruit Kitty Pryde. Jean is in Greece on this island, getting kind of mind-fucked by this, by Mastermind, Jason Wingard. She goes to see Moira McTaggart, who used to be Professor Xavier's kind of woman. I believe they had a kid together called Legion, who ends up going back in time and killing Xavier, which starts the Age of Apocalypse, and in the interim has sex with his mother, and it's a whole big thing. That's a whole nother story for another time. I'll get to that in a later video. The team gets reunited, ultimately, after the X-Men go to see Kitty Pryde's parents to recruit her to Xavier's school. Kitty kind of asked them, can you just take me away because my parents are arguing at the moment, blah, blah, blah. Parents are kind of unstable. They're getting a divorce or some shit like that. Kitty kind of falls in love with Colossus at this point. But while they're at this ice cream parlor, they get attacked by the Hellfire Club and get kidnapped and taken. Kitty Pryde ultimately goes in and helps rescue them, and then they're all kind of reunited with Jean Grey and everything after this battle. When we get to find out the members of the Hellfire Club, there's like Sebastian Shaw, this guy that can kind of cause the mass of people to get heavier and all this kind of stuff. So there's a huge fight, big brawl, great fun, great read. So after this all happens, Jean Grey kind of unleashes the power of the Dark Phoenix and fucks off into outer space and ends up basically destroying an entire sun, which collapses pretty much a solar system, killing billions of people. Those people are under the protection of the Shia Empire. Now, who the fuck are the Shia Empire? They're a race of aliens that we find out Professor X is in love with the Empress of the Shia Empire, and he's probably diddling her on the side as much as a crippled person can diddle an alien bird woman. So the Shia Empire, after Jean Grey returns to Earth, Professor X tries to kind of put mental blocks in to contain the Phoenix Force, which surged out of the sun and consumed Jean Grey. That's why she's going batshit crazy. The Phoenix Force is a Shia legend, basically a destroyer of worlds. And we've seen Jean Grey do that when she ate a sun and basically killed 5 billion people. The Shia come to Earth. They take the X-Men, including Jean Grey, who has these mental blocks so she can't harness the Phoenix Force, and they basically say she's got to be held accountable for what she's done. And Professor X, because he's lived with the Shia for a bit at this point, tells them, we're going to do this trial by combat thing. You pick your guys, I'll pick our guys, the X-Men, and then we'll fight, and whoever wins, that's what happens. The Shia pick the Imperial Guard with, you know, all these like aliens with weird abilities, really fucking cool. And the X-Men go up against them. The X-Men are getting absolutely hammered because it's the 1980s and the X-Men, that's what it was like in comics back then. The heroes got hammered and then they found some reserve of strength and did a beatdown. But here's where it gets really interesting, because originally Chris Claremont wanted the X-Men to win. In the comic books, he wanted the X-Men to win. And Jim Shooter, who was the editor of Marvel Comics at the time, said, no, she's killed all these people. She cannot possibly survive. She has to be held accountable for this. So they killed off Jean Grey, which is what happens in the book. Jean Grey actually sacrifices herself. Cyclops, being the whiny little bitch that he usually is, he's like, don't do it, Jean, I love you. And she's like, I love you too, pew, pew, pew. And then she's gone. She kills herself with Kree technology. That's another thing in this book. We get the Kree and the Skrull working together, famously in comics, and also in, we saw it in Captain Marvel, later in kind of other movies. The Kree and the Skrull kind of hate each other, but because of the Phoenix Force, they've kind of come together. Jean Grey, the fight takes place on the moon. Jean Grey finds this Kree technology and uses it to basically kill herself, thus ending the Phoenix Force. Thus, everything kind of goes back to normal, or as normal as it possibly can. And that is where the novel ends, the end of the Dark Phoenix saga. For those of you that want to know what happens, because you're like, but Jean Grey's in the comic books now, and she was, and she's back, and she was, and she's back. Yeah, turns out in the comic books, she was in a cocoon under some lake in New York the entire time, and the Jean Grey that died in the Phoenix Force was basically just the Phoenix impersonating Jean Grey. But we don't get any of that in the book because the book does it right. So, that is the novelization of the Dark Phoenix saga. Now, it is different from the comic books in as much as it's set in 2019. So, Kitty Pryde is this computer hacker. She has a cell phone, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Does that take away from the story? Of course it doesn't. I mean, it's the Dark Phoenix saga. It's fucking awesome no matter where you get it. If you want to read the original comics, please do. They are fantastic. If you couldn't be bothered and you've got Disney Plus, watch the adaptation that they did in the X-Men animated series. It's awesome. Want to read the book? Read the book. If you want to watch the movie, which sure, probably not the best way to do it, but it's still fucking fantastic. So go and do that. But Dark Phoenix Saga is one of the greatest comic book stories of all time, and I highly recommend you go and check it out. Please, if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell. Keep an eye out because Plaguelands Media has another Kickstarter coming up, which I will be doing a video on for the channel, but it is going to be fantastic. It is the art of Ian Van Gamet. It is the writing of Luke Carman, and my name is in there somewhere for whatever I did for it, but you are really going to want to check out that Kickstarter, so keep an eye out for that. But most importantly, stay safe, have a fantastic rest of your day, and of course, read a fucking comic book series, people.